my name is Antonia. I am a second-year veterinary student, and today I'm going to be talking to you all about ticks, why you should care about them, and why your veterinarians are always telling you to give your pets preventatives. Before you click away because you think ticks are gross and you don't want to hear about it, just listen to me. Ticks and other bugs are simply a natural part of our world, so it's important to understand how they impact our lives. And by our lives, I'm not just talking about the human lives, but also our pets, all of the animals around us. They can also be impacted by ticks. So let's start off by talking about what ticks are and where they're found. Ticks, like spiders, are arachnids, so they have 8 legs. And also like spiders, there are many different kinds of ticks in the world. Hundreds of different species of ticks can be found worldwide, and depending on the type of tick, they can transmit a variety of different diseases to humans and animals. Luckily for us, most of these species don't actually transmit disease and are therefore pretty harmless to us. But for those that do, we need to know how to protect ourselves to make sure that we and our animals don't get sick. In North America, there are about 8 different species of ticks that can make dogs sick specifically. This is why it's so important for us to learn about these little parasites, because in this case, prevention is key. So let's talk about how ticks impact animal and human health. First off, I'm going to start talking about the life cycle and how they even hitch a ride on you in the first place. So to best explain this, I'm going to go over the rough life cycle of a hard tick. Now, if you don't know what a hard tick is, then stay tuned. Essentially, there are 2 groups of ticks, the hard ticks and the soft ticks. But we're going to be focusing more on the hard ticks because those are the ones that actually have more of an impact on animal health. Hard ticks are what we call 3-host ticks. Hello, editing Antonia here. So I forgot to mention that 3-host ticks are not the only types of hard ticks. There are 2-host and 1-host hard ticks, but the 3-host ticks are mainly of public health importance and the ones that are going to cause us the most problems with diseases. So that's the one I'm talking about, but I just wanted to make a disclaimer that there also are 2 and 1-host ticks. Okay, back to the video. That means throughout their life, they are going to have been on 3 separate hosts. Now, what is a host? A host is really just any living creature. A mammal, a reptile, a human like you. So as the tick develops from an egg into an adult, it's going to jump onto a host, which is another living being, suck that host's blood, and then once it's all full with its blood meal, it's going to fall off and wait for another host. And this cycle repeats for a total of 3 times. So ticks really are quite patient and sneaky. They really are just sitting around waiting for a host to pop up. They're going to be hanging out in the grass and the leaves and little bushes, waiting to sense if there's an animal or human that's walking past where they can hitch a ride on. And what I find particularly cool about this is that this process of waiting for a host is called questing, which really makes sense because they're kind of on a quest to find a host to find their next meal. So if a tick does sense another human or an animal passing by, they're going to stretch out their tiny little legs and grab onto that host. Then they're either going to bite the host right there where they grabbed on, or they're going to travel to a more comfortable location in the host, where they then bite the skin and then drink the blood. Locations that they commonly like to go include behind the ear, at the base of the tail, and in the armpits. So make sure to check yourselves and check your pet in those areas. So as I mentioned, ticks eat blood, but they are much slower at feeding than mosquitoes are. Because of that, they really latch onto the skin, and it's very difficult to just flick them off like a mosquito or another bug. Pretty gross, right? Another key point to note though is that even though the ticks kind of bury their head into the skin, the host doesn't actually realize that the tick is there. And this is because tick saliva contains a numbing agent, so the host isn't actually going to feel that there's a little bite there and that the tick is attached. And this is all for benefit to the tick. Sure, it doesn't hurt the host, which is fine, but the tick is therefore less likely to be discovered and therefore has more of a chance of eating a full meal of blood. And that is why it's so important to check yourself and to check your pets for any ticks whenever you come back from an outside trip, because you never know where you might find one. So you might be wondering, if tick bites don't hurt and the tick eventually falls off on its own anyway, why are we concerned about them? Well, I am glad you asked. Ticks, unfortunately, are able to transmit various different diseases from animals to humans, which is why it's really important that we are aware of them and that we protect ourselves. Remember that they feed on blood? Well, due to this nature of jumping between hosts and drinking blood from each host, that increases the chance of the tick transmitting a disease that might have been in the blood of one host into the blood of another host. There are way too many diseases for me to list off here, but some of the big ones that you potentially might recognize include Lyme disease, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, tularemia, and cytozoonosis. Lyme disease, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and tularemia are all examples of zoonotic diseases. And a zoonotic disease is a disease that can be transmitted from an animal to a human, which is why it's so important to practice good anti-tick habits. However, I don't want to scare you. Most tick-borne diseases are relatively rare, and so the chances that you're going to get one isn't particularly high, but it's important to be informed so that you're prepared and you can really minimize the risk of you or your pet getting one of these diseases. Apart from these diseases, though, ticks can also cause general skin irritation at the area where the bite is, potentially infection, anemia, which means your red blood cells are struggling to carry oxygen throughout your body, and something called tick paralysis, which is caused by a toxin that is found in the tick's saliva. A good thing about that, though, is that usually this resolves on its own once you remove the tick from the body. So now let's talk about how to protect yourself and your pets from ticks. Theoretically, if your dog brings in a tick from outside into your home, that tick could fall off your dog and then latch onto you, which obviously we don't want. And this is one of the reasons you should be giving your dog tick preventatives, ideally all year round. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, dogs are quite prone to getting ticks and to getting tick diseases, and vaccines unfortunately aren't available for the majority of the diseases that your dog can get from a tick. And even if vaccines were available, that wouldn't stop the tick from latching onto your dog's fur, dropping off inside your home, and then latching onto you. However, if you give your dog tick preventatives, then any ticks that latch onto your dog are going to ultimately die and are going to be unable to transmit disease to your dog or to any other animal or human in the home, which is great. That's what we want. And so ideally, you want your pets on year-round tick preventatives. And you might be thinking, well, I live in an area where it's snowing outside for 6 months of the year. I'm pretty sure I don't need tick preventatives for my dog during that time. In theory, that is correct, but it's important to know that some ticks can hang out indoors and you might not realize it. And really, you just need one day of slightly warmer, balmy weather for ticks to hatch from their eggs and to make your dog their next host. Additionally, with climate change, ticks are starting to move into areas that previously really didn't have a lot of tick activity going on, which means the diseases that these ticks are transmitting are also starting to spread across the United States. Tick-borne disease cases are unfortunately increasing in both animals and humans, which is why it is recommended to give year-round preventatives and not just during the summertime. And so to wrap this up, let's talk about how to keep your pets and yourself safe. Number one, again, give your pets tick preventatives year-round. Though, side note, never give your cats any medications that are meant for dogs or vice versa. Always please consult your veterinarian, because tick preventatives that are safe for your dog might be toxic to your cat. So please don't take anything I've said in this video as actual medical advice. Next is to regularly check yourself and your pets for ticks whenever you've been outside. And this includes checking all of those sneaky areas that I mentioned earlier, because that is where the ticks like to hang out. Plus, it's generally a good idea to keep an eye out for ticks when you're just petting your pet or grooming them, giving them a nice brush. You never know what you might find. It may also help to tick-proof your yard by making sure there aren't any leaf piles anywhere, that you keep grasses mowed down low, because again, ticks like to hang out in those longer grassy areas. If you go outside on a trail, make sure you stay in the center of the trail. You should also avoid wandering off trails if you happen to be in a park or something similar. And for yourself, the human, make sure you're wearing long pants. Make sure you can tuck those into some socks and some boots. And always, again, just check yourself. Ideally, shower after you get in from outside if you've been on a trail or a hike, because if there is a tick on you that hasn't attached yet, it can help flush them off your body if you didn't realize that you even had a tick on yourself. So I hope this video was helpful and that you understand a little more why veterinarians ask you to give your pets tick preventatives. Ultimately, the goal is to prevent ticks from ever attaching, to help prevent them from passing on any diseases to you or your animal. And of course, make sure to reach out to your veterinarian or physician if you have more questions. And I've also linked some sources down below in the description where you can read more about ticks and how they affect you, the pets, and the world. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!